you are aware that the goal will be very simple. It doesn't matter if you hit the other side. Do you agree with how I feel? It wasn't just a show for me when I watched Star Trek TOS for the first time on my family's old black and white TV. It was like going into a world from my childhood that I never wanted to leave. When the whoosh of the Enterprise came through the booming speaker, the whole family would stop eating dinner, move their chairs closer together, and wait to see what kind of tricks Captain Kirk would do. How many times would Spock raise an eyebrow, or how many times would McCoy sigh and say, "I'm a doctor, not a lawyer"? Even though the picture and sound were wavy at times, those moments were strangely beautiful. You may not have known this, but behind all that grandeur were a lot of mistakes and scenes that were not allowed to be shown that people at the time never saw. It was a kiss that was seen as morally wrong and a band prop that made an entire show have to be rewritten. A torture scene that was erased in 24 hours. All of them were buried by Star Trek in the 1960s. We are opening those backroom doors again today. And finding 15 mistakes, scenes that were not allowed, and the darkest secrets in Star Trek TOS history. 15. Charlie X, the Enterprise's turbo lift quick change mistake. Anyone who watched TV in the late 1960s remembers how exciting it was when the Star Trek theme song played and Captain Kirk stepped out of the turbolift with confidence. The gold shimmer on his outfit was caught by the studio lights. People who saw it thought it was just a normal few seconds that went by before they could think twice. But when HD reconstructions came out decades later, we found something strange in Charlie X. Comes in wearing one outfit and leaves wearing a completely different one. It's a simple scene. Kirk is wearing his usual gold command jacket when he and Charlie get into the turbo lift. But when the doors open again a second later, that uniform is no longer there. It has been replaced by a completely different one. There is no costume change or transition shot. Kirk comes out of nowhere as if he had just slid down Batman's Batpole. People who watched on black and white TVs probably didn't notice the mistake because it happened so quickly. But in today's HD, the Enterprise turbolift looks like it has accidentally turned into a fashion changer. This is one of the silliest magic tricks in the whole show. 14. Do you remember the first time you saw Uhura on TV? It was the kiss that scared the whole network. Sure of herself, brilliant, and moving with a lightness that still gave off an air of power. On the Enterprise, she and Kirk had been through a lot of crazy situations together, but no one, not even the network, thought that one moment between them would make everyone hold their breath. Kirk and Uhura didn't just touch lips in Plato's Stepchildren, 1968, they kissed directly and deeply. A real kiss between two actors, with no angles or tricks with the camera. It seems like a very short show to people today. At the time, though, it was like dropping a match into the American TV watching fuel tank. This was the first kiss between two people of different races that was shown across the country, and NBC was so scared about it that they almost erased it from history. Even though it was technically a mistake, the team filmed it on purpose so that NBC had no other choice but to air one of the bravest and most important moments in US television history. 13. Uhura's memory is lost, but she's fine in the next episode, The Changeling. Even when you close your eyes while sitting up straight at the computer, you can still see Uhura. With the earpiece pressed close, her voice was soft but clear as she talked to a whole galaxy beyond the stars. A lot of people saw Uhura as more than just the communications officer. They saw her as the picture of cool intelligence and complete professionalism on a bridge, always pulled tight like a string. That's why the Changeling's twist shocked so many. Nomad reads Uhura's mind and erases all of her memories, leaving her so blank that she has to learn everything all over again. The letter sound. We watch her put letters together and sound them out like a kid starting from scratch. From a story point of view, this is a traumatic event that changes the course of your whole life. After just a few episodes, Uhura is back in her place on the Enterprise bridge, fully in charge of her abilities, and she doesn't say a word about what happened. No trauma, no path to healing. Not even a quick word. The tragedy is dealt with in the show as if it were just an afternoon nap that was forgotten. It's the kind of huge consistency error that would only happen on 1960s TV. It's a disaster that could ruin a life that can be fixed by tuning in next week. 12. Red sequence. The scene where Kirk is tortured was removed 24 hours later. When I was a kid, I used to watch Star Trek on TV. While the boys in my neighborhood fought over Kirk for hours on end. Back then, viewers were used to the idea of a hero who never falls. In fact, in American TV, this was pretty much seen as the law. We could never picture a scene where Kirk wasn't the unbeatable captain but a man who was squished, scared, and shaking under a harsh red light. There is only a shot of Kirk sitting under the neural neutralizer in Dagger of the Mind. The neural neutralizer is a mind control device that looks calm. But not many people know that this scene was completely different in the original version, and it was so intense that NBC stepped in right away. In the cut that wasn't shown, Kirk is tightly strapped to the chair while red lights flash quickly, like an interrogation machine. The camera stays close to him for several long seconds, his eyes twitching wildly and his jaw locked in real fear. Helen Noel's story broke my heart the most. In the original version, she just stands there, feeling powerless and guilty as she sees the man who trusted her slowly lose his mind. When NBC showed the video, they immediately said it was serious psychological torture and should not be shown on primetime TV. As a result, within 24 hours, the scene was erased and the neural neutralizer, which was originally much scarier, was changed. A much softer device in the form that was shown on TV. Putting your face right up against the wooden TV cabinet is a strange way to remember things that only early Star Trek fans really get. It was hard to read the tiny letters because everything was moving around in a storm of static. I'll never forget that afternoon when we all got together to watch where no one had gone before. The fight between Kirk and Gary Mitchell made the mood strangely sad. We were pulled even closer to the screen, as if we were looking at a secret that we weren't supposed to see. The stone grave sign then looked rough and cold. Then someone read the carving, and we all stopped moving for a second before laughing out loud. James Kirk, not T. It was such a clear mistake that only old, fuzzy TVs could have saved it. When the HD remasters came out decades later, however, the mistake was so clear that no one could say it was a small mistake. That started a fight that went on for 50 years. An error with the props or a mistake by the writer? Or was Mitchell on purpose making fun of Kirk CBS? In the end, they tried to put out the fire by giving a last-minute justification that sounded like it was made up quickly. Everyone thought Gary was confused and remembered wrong, but that didn't change the fact that the mistake became a tale. There are times when one lost letter is enough to make the whole Trekkie community go crazy and make TOS even cuter in the most random 1966 way. The scene from the very first line to the end. Have you ever watched City on the Edge of Forever again and thought that the beginning scene was kinder than the tragic ones that followed? That wasn't a mistake. When I saw the episode for the first time on our old TV, I thought McCoy had just accidentally overdosed. I didn't find out that the scene was supposed to be much worse until a long time after the fact. In Harlan Ellison's first draft, McCoy overdoses on morphine because he is scared after a small accident on the ship. He runs away from the Enterprise and throws himself through the Guardian of Forever's time gate because the moment makes him crazy and suspicious. As a gunshot, it was meant to start a story about fate, responsibility, and the terrible consequences of changing the past. But NBC freaked out just like McCoy did in the story. The network thought it was completely wrong to talk about morphine, which was a very taboo drug in the 1960s. They asked right away that all mentions be taken down because they were afraid that the picture of the company's chief medical officer overdosing would cause a chain reaction on family TV. As a result, morphine was taken away and replaced with cordrazine, a made-up name for a TV safe. Ellison had planned for the story to have a darker, grittier emotional weight, but that was taken away. 9. The famous ripped shirt that Kirk wore. When you watch TOS again as an adult, you can see some things that you missed the first time. I didn't think about anything when I was a kid. I just thought Kirk was so strong that not even his outfit could stop him. But when I watched the HD remake frame by frame years later, I knew the truth. The shirt was torn by nothing more than a heavy throw or punch. It happened because of a break in the action. One frame, the shirt is still whole. It looks like Kirk just got out of a brutal fight to the death in the next shot, or his chest is torn open wide. It was clear that the wardrobe department had made the scene better to fit the heroic mood. Interestingly, this small mistake has turned into one of the cutest things about TOS. In this world, Kirk fights not only aliens but also Starfleet outfits that aren't built right. 8th. Kirk, the great strength that no one else knew about. At that time, every kid in my neighborhood thought Kirk was the strongest person in the universe. We copied his stance, the way he knelt down before starting a fight, and especially his two-handed punch, which none of us could ever do. Kirk was more than a hero. He was a wonder. Until we grew up and watched the show again with better clarity. The kind of man you thought could move a world if he wanted to. During one fight scene, pushes a huge rock out of the way of an opponent. As a child, I thought it was a moment of being stronger than Superman, but HD showed me the sad truth. The rock wobbles like a foam pillow, and Kirk moves it with the lightness of someone moving an empty styrofoam box. In the 1960s, a serious moment turns into unintentional comedy, which makes the memories of youth even better. 7. It's been a long time since I watched Miri for the first time. It was sad to see dead children on TV. All the kids in my area, who were still in elementary school, thought it was a strange and sad event. A world that looked like Earth with scared kids running around and Kirk trying to talk to them. With a rare kindness. When we were kids, we could only feel the sadness on the surface. We had no idea that the first version was much scarier. Early drafts of the script said that when Kirk's team first beamed down, the camera should move past strollers that have been left behind, schoolbooks that are only partially opened, teddy bears that are covered in dust, and the bodies of children who have been covered. And pictures so suffocatingly heavy that NBC banned it right away, no child bodies on broadcast TV. The scene was taken down within a day, which made the event much less tragic. A moment that was buried in a world that was supposed to be much more sad. 6. How the King felt about it. A song that plays even when she doesn't speak. Some evenings are still very clear in my mind. The house was only lit by a small TV that was buzzing with junk. Still, every time TOS came on, we all sat there perfectly still, as if we were watching a real play. Back then, musical moments made me feel like I was at a live show. The lights, voices, facial emotions, and everything else felt holy and pure. But when I watched The Conscience of the King again in HD, that beautiful memory hit me hard. When Era starts to sing, her mouth barely opens. The tune moves slowly. And the last note plays, even though her lips are already shut. We didn't notice it when we were kids. It's hard not to laugh as you watch this now. A scene that was supposed to be dramatic turns out to be a ventriloquist singing by accident. And the Klingon criticism of human music starts to make a strange amount of sense. 5. Tomorrow was yesterday. A screen that seems to be made of wrinkly paper. Remember? How amazed you were when you saw the view screen of the Enterprise for the first time. For kids like me back then, it was science that we could not even imagine. It's so sleek and modern that it makes my family's TV look like a tin box. But the HD remaster breaks the fantasy in a way that looks surprisingly like it was made by hand. There is a time in Tomorrow is Yesterday when the camera moves across the main screen. And if you look closely, that high-tech screen from the 23rd century is wrinkly like old paper. The studio lights make the screen look like a painted piece of cardboard because they show every little fold. A cute but small mistake. A warning that Star Trek's future was made with cheap parts but priceless ideas. 4. A camera rig can be seen right on the bridge, where no one has gone before. I still remember seeing the Enterprise bridge on TV when I was a kid. It looked like the whole room got brighter. We would fight over who would play Sulu, who would be Scotty, and who would get to sit in Kirk's chair. As kids, we thought the bridge was perfect, clean, futuristic, and couldn't have any problems. Still, that trick was broken in Where No Man Has Gone Before with the HD version many years later. People today can easily spot something that does not fit in the 23rd century when the camera pans past Mitchell and Kelso. Something big and a bunch of wires lying right on the bridge floor. No one could see anything on the old, fuzzy feeds, but HD doesn't miss anything. It was a mistake that should have been taken out, but now it's a cute memory of when Star Trek was still learning how to use tape to make a whole universe. And excitement. 3. When HD leaked our childhoods, stunt doubles were revealed. I can still remember those quiet nights when the only sound in the neighborhood was the faint sound of Star Trek bouncing from house to house. The picture was so fuzzy back then that Kirk's face would get smeared every time he turned his head. We didn't care, though. We thought Kirk always jumped, fought, and did the acrobatics that saved the world on his own. After many years, HD came along like a pane of clear glass, taking away the haze of youth. When I saw a stunt double's face clearly on screen for the first time, I froze. It wasn't because I was upset, it was because I was shocked to learn something we kids never had eyesight for. That person who did those famous spins and kicks turned out to be someone else. This will make you laugh and tell you that the most beautiful things are sometimes the ones you couldn't see before. 2. Return of the Archons. This is the show where a lot of cute mistakes happen. When I watched Return of the Archons again after a long time, I found it funniest that my memory made me feel cheated. As a child, I thought the show was dark and mysterious, with a slight scary tone that made me hold my breath. The HD remaster, on the other hand, showed a completely different world, where every important moment has a small crack. It used to make me jump, but now the rock just bounces around like a rubber ball. A scary door disappears from the frame, as if it were just taken off for ease of use. The funniest thing is that a character covers his ears for a few seconds before the attack sound effect plays. The thing that used to scare me now makes me laugh the most. It's funny, but that makes me love TOS even more. Point 1. A zombie makes room for the film crew, which is the cutest mistake in TOS. I remember being scared when I watched this episode for the first time as a little kid because it showed sick people walking around a strange world like zombies. From a child's point of view, it was unbearably intense, a dead land with no people and Kirk's team winding through danger. But in the HD update, the scene changes right away into hilariously silly. A zombie lies still in the middle of the path, blocking the characters. But when the film crew comes up behind her, she lifts her leg nicely to let them pass, and then she goes back to where she was, as if nothing happened. In a split second, a scary moment turns into a polite example of professional behavior, making the scene less serious. There are some small mistakes in TOS that make it more likable than ever. It's both funny and beautiful to think about how things we thought were perfect at the time were actually full of flaws, mistakes, and rubber props that were shot at the wrong time. The team never thought these things would become part of Star Trek history. Still, those flaws are what make TOS feel friendlier and more real. We watch these shows again not to make fun of them, but to laugh at them. To remember that Star Trek didn't start with a lot of technology, but with people who were passionate about science. There is a huge world made up of a small soundstage, real flaws, and dreams that are much bigger than a black and white TV screen. That may be why TOS has been around for so long, almost 60 years. It was brave to dream, try, and fail, not because it was right. And we're brave enough to tell stories that were timeless. If you grew up with these cute mistakes or just found them now, after decades, please let us know what you think in the comments. I want to hear your story. Don't forget to like, follow, and click the bell to make sure you don't miss the next trip through Hollywood's dark corners, bloopers, secrets, and wonders.